Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview Texas's football schedule for the 2024 football season. We are doing this the morning after the SEC has announced the schedules for 2024. First of all, Texas and your fans, welcome to the SEC. And boy, Blake, this is we've seen teams get rougher schedules, I think, than what Texas is going to get. But at the same time, there's no SEC schedule that's easy. One thing that stands out to me is the Aggies only play 3 true road games, given that Oklahoma game is in Dallas. They're one of 3 teams in that category. I believe Florida is one of the teams, and Texas A&M is the other team by virtue of the Georgia-Florida game being played in Jacksonville every year, as well as the A&M Arkansas game. Anyway, I've rambled enough. Your thoughts on Texas's schedule initially?
Yeah, it's it's I think initially what stands out is the rivalry games. With having to get both Arkansas and Texas A&M, both away from home in true road games in year one, the SEC. That I think the SEC maybe had a little fun with that idea to send Texas on the road in both of those. But the usual game against Oklahoma in Dallas, and I think Texas going to Vanderbilt. It's like just one of those games that without the SEC connection, you just never would have thought of, right? Texas road trip at Vanderbilt for whatever reason. It's just one of those that I don't know why I just would have never thought of happening. But then, of course, you've got the game against Georgia, which by that point, could be the 3-time defending national champion, depending on what happens this season. And so that will be, as you and I talked about kind of in the general overview video we did of the schedule for everyone in the SEC, that will be one of the hottest tickets, I think, out there, period. And yeah, I mean, where's Florida at, right? I mean, Florida, Texas, that's a big game in terms of just a tradition, but where is that Florida program at a year from now when that game takes place? So yeah, it's like we said, Texas and Oklahoma, it was definitely a welcome to the SEC type schedule setup, I think, for these two teams just based on the opponents. So
yeah, before we get into I guess some deeper thoughts on this. There's 2 things that stand out, and we mentioned this in another video. I think the league did an excellent job of protecting the rivalries in this one, as you mentioned here. Like, I'll bring up Tennessee as an example. Tennessee's got 3 teams that are sort of traditional rivals. At times, Florida's been its biggest game. At times, Alabama's been its biggest game. And, of course, Vanderbilt just down the road in state. They've been playing for 130 years or whatever it's been, 140. So there's that. And I think you see that here with Texas, as you mentioned. The other thing is the certainty / uncertainty portion of this. And we said that we feel like if you can project ahead for the near future and maybe the more distant future, 4 or 5 years out, you feel like the three teams that you feel like if you wake up and you've got them scheduled for 2029, you feel like Georgia, Alabama, LSU are going to be pretty good teams without knowing anybody on those rosters. Some other teams we've mentioned, Tennessee seems to be a team that's climbing. And then everybody else, you've got maybe a little bit more uncertainty on how they're going to be in this brutally tough environment now that you've added Texas and Oklahoma to the league. So I look at Texas's schedule, and as we're sitting here in June of 2023, we really don't know what Mississippi State is going to be under Zach Arnett. Remember, Mike Leach, of course, passed away at the end of 2022. They're changing schemes, so there's a lot of uncertainty there. Florida, that is one that could go a lot of different directions. I was hearing talk a year ago that Florida would be the team that would be the most poised maybe for long-term success. Billy Napier is very well liked and respected. He is changing a culture down there that Dan Mullen left behind in terms of culture and talent, frankly, that stunk by Florida standards. So it's going to take some time for him to clean that up, but that fan base is not the most patient. You remember they fired Jim McElwain after back-to-back SEC titles 1 year later. Now, look, the East there, the SEC East titles, I meant to say. Now, the East then, when he won it, was not the same as it is now, that Georgia is the best team in the country the last 2 years, and now that Tennessee is on its way back. So it's a much different East. But the point being, that's not a very patient fan base. So that Florida game is one that we could be sitting here in 2024 going, okay, that's one that Texas should win, or Florida could be in a completely different place. Kentucky is a program that's been very solid, and of course Georgia, I feel like, is going to be poised for a national title run. Then you look at the road portion of the schedule. Oklahoma, that's a program that under Brent Venables had a losing season a year ago. We don't know where exactly that is going. A&M with Jimbo Fisher, he makes a hire Bobby Petrino as an offensive coordinator. A&M had a very disappointing 2022 season. I think if it's disappointing again in 2023, you wonder how long that marriage could survive. Arkansas under Sam Pittman has been very decent, but again, some teams are going to get crushed in this landscape just by the nature of the weight of what they play. I look at this, and I think there is, as I look at Texas's schedule, that there are a lot of teams that Texas plays as we sit here in June of 2023 that you really have no idea what that's going to look like by 2024 by virtue of coaching changes or whatever else.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. I mean, there are quite a few there that you don't really have a. I don't think you can project like you mentioned a year out because it's all really going to come down to what happens in the 2023 season for a good group of these teams. And so yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Like we covering the SEC, Florida, Texas A&M, Arkansas. These are all kind of situations, and we've talked about them as we preview those teams for the upcoming season. These are sort of statement seasons for all three of those programs. And, like we said, Mississippi State's more of an unknown, just given everything that happened there. And Kentucky's a team on the rise. And, Vanderbilt's probably a team on the rise too, but it's probably hard to project Vanderbilt as a team that, you're going to be circling at the top of the schedule for Texas by, you're not going to do that by any means. But I think those three opponents, Florida, Arkansas, A&M, to me, are the most fascinating outside of the obvious ones with the rivalry games, with Arkansas included in that, and the game against Georgia, just because whatever happens in 2023 will probably dictate how we view those games heading into 2024. So,
Yeah, the Vanderbilt game is one I wanted to circle for its own reasons. First of all, to Texas fans maybe watching us for the first time, we are located in the Nashville area, so we've been on that campus to cover a lot of games. Number two, that of course is one of the more attractive travel destinations in the SEC. You go to a Vanderbilt game, and when it's an SEC team coming to town, you expect the opponent to have the advantage in the stands. There are two wild cards with Vandy, though, right now. Clark Lee snapped a 26-game losing streak a year ago, beat Florida and Kentucky at the end of the year. Both games where Vanderbilt was double-digit underdogs. So this may not be at the time. Texas is going to be favored in that game, but this may not be your father's push over Vanderbilt by that point. Clark Lee is rebuilding. It's not been through the portal, but it's been through building a roster of kids with NFL type measurables that are underlooked. And so it'll be interesting to see what that looks like in 2024. The other thing with Vanderbilt is if you go visit the stadium right now, what is in the formerly closed end zone right now, Blake?
you've asked me this in multiple videos, and I don't think I remember the answer in any of them.
Well, it's a giant pile of rubble. They are
There you go.
renovating that stadium. They have knocked out the closed end zone, and it is they now have two open end zones. And there's even some question as to whether they'll play all their 2023 home games there right now as they try to get that back. They're going to build a football only building in that portion. I think by that point it may not be completed, but it's going to be a reduced capacity at Vanderbilt for 2024. So that's going to be a really tough ticket probably to get because it's only going to seat, if they play the game in that stadium, maybe 20-something thousand people. So that might be a plan ahead game if you're trying to get your tickets to Nashville, Texas fans.
All right. So I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to throw something on you that I know I don't think you've looked at. You may know this, but you haven't mentioned it yet. So if we're just looking at Texas's schedule from a traditional, standpoint, all right, we talked about it. Georgia's there, could be three-time defending national champion. Um, the Oklahoma game speaks for itself. The renewed rivalries with Arkansas and Texas A&M. So those are all on the schedule, right? Florida's there. I mean, depending on where Florida is, that's from a traditional standpoint. Those are two successful programs. But Chris, The one game we've not mentioned that's not on the SEC portion of the schedule, at Michigan. And so think about
Ooh.
that. Texas has to go to Arkansas, Texas A&M, Michigan, in addition to getting Georgia at home, the game against Oklahoma and Dallas. So think about all the just big time matchups that are on the schedule for Texas. That is just a loaded slate with that Michigan game on September 7th in Ann Arbor. So tremendous schedule, I think, for the Texas Longhorns in 2024.
Well, the SEC took a lot of heat for not going to a 9-game schedule when it made that announcement last week as we do this. And I get it. We would have all liked to have seen that. But I think my reaction as I looked at these slates, and we said this in another video, is that I go, man, this team got a tough schedule. And then you looked at the next team, and it's a hold my beer. And really, I don't look at any team in this league and just say that is just an easy slate. I think the closest team that I come to think got to pass on anything right now is Missouri. And look, I could this time next year we could look at Missouri's schedule and my take might be completely different because portal, all kinds of things can change. But yeah, the other thing is that if you've scheduled one of those teams, and Florida, we mentioned Florida has got, I think, Miami and Florida State on its schedule. If you've got any other heavyweights on your slate, like Texas does, and you drew the wrong portion of SEC teams, that is enough to take, maybe a playoff caliber season and turn it into 6 or 7 wins or worse if it really collapses at the end, staying home for bowl season. And that can happen to just about anybody in this league.
Yep. No, Texas fans are gonna have fun traveling in 2024 because they got some fun road trips. Like I said, even the one against Vanderbilt in Nashville. I mean, it's Nashville, right? So yeah,
That's the road
that's
trip that everybody in the league circles because it's the coolest city to visit. Now we're biased because we live here, but nobody would argue that.
well, nonetheless. I mean, it's going to Michigan to try to get in there. Yeah, and then the other rivalry games. We talk about the hot tickets. We kind of teased it in the other video we did, but you're looking for some of the hottest tickets. Texas at Arkansas, Texas at A&M, obviously the Oklahoma game, the Georgia game. I mean, it's just going to be wild fun. And I think for Texas fans, hopefully that results in them kind of cementing themselves back, at the top in terms of being right there and making college football playoff. And yeah, but it won't be an easy transition into the SEC with this first initial schedule. So
Well, Texas fans, if you're checking us out for the first time, welcome to our channel. We cover SEC football, basketball, and baseball wall to wall with equal passion, I would say. Blake's our basketball guy. I'm our baseball guy. And we both love our football too. Best way to get all our stuff, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications. That way you get notified when we put new content up. And if you hit the like button, and tell a friend too, that helps us out too. That helps our analytics and of course helps us get noticed and all those things. We've been doing this the way we're doing it for a little bit over a year, and it's grown quickly as people have liked it. And we hope you do too. For Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee at Southeastern 14. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon with more SEC baseball, basketball, and football content.